The tragic ending of Laurel and Hardy. What really happened to Laurel and Hardy? Laurel and Hardy are the best comedy duo the world has ever known. Before their partnership began, both Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy had enjoyed a successful individual career in silent movies. But after the mid-1920s, when they formed their double act, they made movies together for 25 years and became a formidable combination. The fat, pompous one and the thin, stupid one, both equally dumb, were in reality two very shrewd, talented, and vastly experienced performers. Part of their secret is the simplicity of their humor. It is universal and everyone, young or old, anywhere in the world, can relate to them instantly. Their innocent warmth, charisma, and casual style of comedy transcend all political and language barriers. They speak the same language to people everywhere. It is the language of comedy. Laurel and Hardy made over 100 movies together from 1926 to 1951, beginning with short two-reelers and then progressing to feature-length films such as Sons of the Desert in 1933 and Way Out West in 1937. Their most acclaimed period was before 1940, when they were with the Hal Roach Studio. After that, they had less artistic license, and their movies became more formulaic and less spontaneous. Even today, over half a century later, they are still instantly recognizable, and their punchlines are fondly recognized and remembered. I'm Mr. Hardy, and this is my friend Mr. Laurel. Well, here's another nice mess you've gotten me into. Individually, they were brilliant actors. Together, they were unique comedy geniuses, forming a partnership which will never be forgotten. Stan Laurel was the dynamo behind the success of Laurel and Hardy. As well as being a clever and experienced actor, he had great skill as a writer, movie director, and editor. When Oliver Hardy was asked about the secrets behind their success, he simply replied, "Ask Stan." Stan Laurel was born Arthur Stanley Jefferson on the 16th of June, 1890, in Overston, Cumbria, in northern England. He had two brothers and a sister, and came from a theatrical family. Both his parents were prominent stage actors, and for much of his boyhood, Stanley lived with his grandmother in County Durham, where he attended school, until he moved with his family to Glasgow, where his father had become manager of the Metropole Theatre. From a young age, Stanley showed an interest in the stage, and his early ambition was to be a music hall comedian. From the age of 15, he used to play truant from school in order to watch and study the comics at the Britannia Panopticon Theatre in Glasgow, and he made his debut there when he was just 16 years old. By 1910, he was good enough to be invited to join Fred Carnell's traveling comedy troupe, where he was both a featured performer and understudy to its main star, one Charles Chaplin. He traveled with the Carnell troupe to America in 1910, returning to Britain to resume touring. In 1913, he returned with the Carnell troupe, and this time he stayed, touring for several years in vaudeville. He also appeared with the actress May Cuthbert, with whom he lived for 6 years from 1919, although never marrying. When Stan began getting the occasional walk-on role in the fast-developing new medium of motion pictures, and decided that the 13 letters in his stage name of Stan Jefferson was unlucky, it was May who suggested the surname of Laurel, and from 1919 he was always billed as Stan Laurel. He made several short movies between 1917 and 1924 while still touring the vaudeville circuit, including in 1921 making The Lucky Dog with a certain Oliver Hardy, although nothing came of it at the time. In 1924, Stan gave up the stage completely in order to concentrate on movies, and he was given a contract by stuntman-turned-producer Joe Rock to make 12 comedy shorts. He was constantly learning and honing his comedic skills, and when his contract with Rock ended, he was hired by producer Hal Roach, primarily as a writer and director, only acting as a performer occasionally when needed. He directed Yes, Yes, Nanette, starring Oliver Hardy, in 1925, and directed and wrote for many other movies during 1925 and 1926. In all, prior to his partnership with Hardy, he appeared in over 60 movies. During 1926, Stan became a regular and important part of the group known as the Hal Roach All-Stars, and was given more performing roles by Hal Roach. It gradually became obvious that whenever he and Oliver were in the same scene together, some special comic spark was ignited. At first, there was no real effort to make them a team, but as they appeared in more films together, their partnership became inevitable. Their first film as a comedy team was 1927's Puttin' Pants on Philip. Together, they began producing a large number of short, brilliant comic films. The team of Laurel and Hardy was born. Oliver Hardy was born Norvell Hardy in Harlem, Georgia, on January 18, 1892, the youngest of 5 children. His father died when he was a baby, and his mother, Emily, became the breadwinner, working as a hotel manager first in Madison and later in Midgeville, Georgia. Norvell showed little interest in schoolwork, but took part enthusiastically in school stage productions and from the age of 8 performed with local minstrel shows. He was a talented singer, and he decided on a musical career. In 1910, aged 18, he became manager of a movie theater which had opened in Midgeville. He became an enthusiastic follower of the fast-growing new medium of movies and decided on a movie acting career. Around this time, he started using the first name Oliver as a tribute to his father, and from 1910 onwards, he always styled himself Oliver Norvell Hardy. In 1913, he moved to Jacksonville, Florida, where he found movie work at the Lubin Film Company and also worked as a cabaret and vaudeville singer at night. He appeared in comic shorts from the outset, often as the comic villain thanks to his 250-pound bulk. Oliver spent the next 10 years gaining experience making silent movies for various companies. Between 1916 and 1918, he made a name for himself in the comedy series Plump and Runt, and he also spent time working freelance for several Hollywood movie companies. For 5 years, from 1918, he partnered with Larry Semin, then a major name in film comedy, and he played the Tin Man in Semin's The Wizard of Oz in 1925. He also worked with other well-known silent movie comics such as Billy West, Jimmy Aubrey, and Bobby Ray. In 1921, he appeared in the movie Lucky Dog with Stan Laurel, another young comedian learning his trade. In 1924, and already a known face in silent movies, Hardy signed with the Hal Roach Studios, working with such headline acts as Our Gang and Charlie Chase. He appeared in the Comedy All-Stars series, and he came into contact again with the young British comic Stan Laurel, who had also signed with Roach as a writer and director. Stan directed Oliver in the movie Yes, Yes, Nanette in 1925. Stan was appearing more and more in front of the camera, and he and Oliver began to share scenes together in movies such as Slippin' Wives and With Love and Hisses in 1927. They were not yet Laurel and Hardy, but the comedic chemistry between them was obvious. Roach's supervising director was future Academy Award-winning director Leo McCarey, and he began teaming them together deliberately. Gradually, the comedians began to develop the characters and interaction which have become so familiar today. Laurel and Hardy were on their way. The characters of Laurel and Hardy, which have become so well known today, did not appear immediately. The first movies in which they appeared together were part of the normal output of the Roach organization, and although the two men gelled perfectly, they were not yet fully recognizable as Laurel and Hardy. Slippin' Wives in 1927, which features Priscilla Deans, one of the top stars of the 1920s, above both Laurel and Hardy, is a clever film which features a virtuoso performance by Stan Laurel, who steals the show. Duck Soup in the same year includes a bowler-hatted Stan and a top-hatted Oliver, but its humor is frenetic compared to the cleverer, better-paced offerings to come from the duo. Nevertheless, Leo McCarey, the supervising director of the Hal Roach studio, had seen enough of the two together on screen to know they had something special. He put them together more and more, and gradually the magic of the partnership began to work. Stan and Ollie went on to make over 70 films during their period with Roach between 1926 and 1940. They started making a great number of short movies such as The Battle of the Century in 1927, Should Married Men Go Home, and Two Tars in 1928, and When Talkies Arrived made a serene and clever transition with Unaccustomed as We Are in 1929. They were amongst the first to realize that the frenetic action of silent slapstick should be slowed down for the more mundane pacing of sound film comedy. Their best work came between 1930 and 1938, with such gems as County Hospital in 1932, The Devil's Brother and Busybodies in 1933, Them Thar Hills in 1934, The Bohemian Girl in 1936, Way Out West in 1937, and Blockheads in 1938. One of the highlights of their career as a double act was The Music Box, winning the Academy Award for Best Live-Action Short Subject of 1932, the first short to be so honored and the only Oscar the boys ever won. They continued to make shorts until 1935, but during this time they also began to create highly successful feature-length comedies too, beginning with Pardon Us in 1931, and continuing with the classic Sons of the Desert in 1933, and Babes in Toyland in 1934, also known as March of the Wooden Soldiers, which has become a much-loved Christmas evergreen. During the making of Babes in Toyland, the relationship between Stan and Hal Roach grew more and more tense after major disagreements between them over the film's plot. Stan and Oliver continued making movies for Roach until 1940, when they split after making their final Roach film, A Chump at Oxford, and joined up with two of the major studios, 20th Century Fox and MGM, in the hope that they would have more freedom to project their ideas on screen. In reality, the opposite happened. They were treated as B-movie performers and were not allowed to contribute to the scripts or improvise on set. The films they made at this time, such as A Haunting We Will Go in 1942, Nothing But Trouble in 1944, and their final American film, The Bullfighters in 1945, did not have the same style or quality as their Roach films, although they were popular with the public and commercially very successful. The team's final movie was Atoll K in 1951, which was a major disappointment, due in no small part to the ill health of both Stan and Ollie. It was the end of their illustrious film careers. Apart from Atoll K, their work after 1945 was focused primarily on live theater and stage tours around Europe. They first of all toured the music halls of Britain in 1947-1948 to great acclaim and followed with other successful tours of Ireland and mainland Europe in 1952 and 1953-54. Both Stan and Ollie had been heavy smokers all their lives and suffered health problems which affected the latter stages of their careers. In December 1954, they made their only American television appearance, an unplanned and unrehearsed edition of This Is Your Life. The success of the show led to renewed negotiations for the boys to do a series of American TV shows called Laurel and Hardy's Fabulous Fables, but the decline in health of the performers caused the plans to be shelved. Oliver had a mild heart attack in 1954, followed by a series of strokes over the next few years that left him paralyzed and he lost the ability to speak. He was nursed during his last illness by his wife Lucille. Oliver Hardy died on August 7, 1957. He was 65 years old. He was buried at Pierce Brothers Valhalla Memorial Park, North Hollywood, California. At the time of Ollie's death, Stan was himself recovering from a stroke and was too ill to go to his partner's funeral, saying Babe would understand. After Ollie's death, Stan never made another public appearance. Stan Laurel died on February 23, 1965, in his apartment in Santa Monica of a heart attack. He was 75 years old. Goodbye and rest in peace, legendary comic actors Laurel and Hardy. Laurel and Hardy. Laurel and